Welcome to Story Orchard, where every tale grows into something unforgettable, and every word helps you grow your English. Before we dive into today's story, tell me, do you enjoy listening with a cup of coffee, or is tea your thing? Here, we don't just tell stories. We help you discover new words, improve your English, and take you right inside the world of the story. So get comfortable, relax, and let's begin today's journey together. The rain had been falling for hours, soft but unrelenting, the kind of drizzle that made the streets glisten like polished stone. From her bedroom window, Aisha could see the drops tracing tiny rivers down the glass, each one catching the dull glow of the streetlight outside. She leaned her forehead against the cool pane, clutching the old notebook she had found while cleaning her desk earlier that afternoon. It wasn't just any notebook. The worn leather cover had a faint scent of paper and ink, and inside were pages filled with words she had written 3 years ago, words she had never shown anyone. At the very end, there was a folded letter, its edges slightly frayed, her handwriting neat but hesitant. She didn't have to open it to remember what it said. It was the proposal she had written to Omar. Not a marriage proposal exactly, but a confession of everything she had never dared to say. The timing back then had never been right. Omar had been her closest friend for years, the one who understood silences, who laughed at her oddest jokes, who remembered her favorite tea without asking. But he had also been tangled in his own life, his career, his family's expectations, his quiet battles that he never quite explained. Aisha had written the letter during one sleepless night, pouring every unsaid word onto the page. She had planned to slip it into his bag the next day, but when the moment came, fear gripped her tighter than courage. She had folded it away, telling herself maybe later, but later never came. Now, 3 years on, Omar was still part of her life, but in a way that felt different. They still spoke, still shared coffee when schedules allowed, but there was a distance she couldn't quite name. His messages were fewer, his laughter more guarded, and she wondered if she had waited too long, if the words in that letter had expired like milk left too long on the shelf. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Her mother peeked in, holding a tray with 2 steaming cups. "You've been sitting here all evening? Come, have tea with us in the lounge." Aisha forced a smile and agreed, though her heart was still heavy with the weight of the letter. Downstairs, the warm hum of family life filled the room. Her younger sister Sarah was sprawled on the sofa scrolling through her phone, while their father sat with a book, adjusting his glasses every now and then. It was ordinary, comforting, yet in that ordinariness, Aisha felt her restlessness grow. Sarah glanced up suddenly. "Oh, Omar called earlier. He said he'll drop by tomorrow evening." The words hit Aisha like a sudden gust of wind. She tried to keep her voice even. "Did he say why?" Sarah shook her head. "No, just that. He wanted to talk to you." That night, sleep came late for Aisha. She lay in bed, the folded letter on her nightstand, the sound of rain still tapping against the window. Tomorrow, Omar would be here, and she wondered, should she finally give him the letter? Or would that be opening a door that was meant to stay closed? The next evening, the rain had stopped, but the streets were still damp, and the air carried that clean, earthy smell that always follows a downpour. Aisha stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the wrinkles in her pale blue kurta, her fingers brushing over the silver bracelet Omar had once given her. It wasn't vanity that kept her adjusting her hair, it was nerves. The folded letter lay in her drawer now, but she could still feel its presence, like an unspoken truth sitting in the corner of her mind. When the doorbell rang, her pulse quickened. She heard her mother's voice greeting Omar warmly, followed by his familiar, gentle laugh. She walked out into the living room, and there he was, the same kind eyes, the same easy smile, though. She noticed faint shadows beneath his eyes, as if sleep had been an occasional visitor lately. Hi, he said softly, as if they were meeting after more than just a few weeks. She smiled back. Hi, come in. They sat in the lounge while her mother brought tea and snacks, making casual conversation about work, mutual friends, and the unpredictable weather. It all felt ordinary on the surface, but underneath, Aisha sensed something else, a hesitation in Omar's voice, a pause before certain words. At one point, Sarah breezed through, grabbing a samosa from the table. I'll be in my room if anyone needs me, she said, winking at Aisha in that teasing way younger siblings do when they suspect something. Finally, when they were alone, Omar leaned back slightly, his gaze resting on the steam curling up from his cup. Aisha, I wanted to tell you something, but I didn't want to just say it over the phone. Her heart thudded. Could this be the moment, the one she had imagined for years? She forced herself to keep her expression calm, even as her mind raced. I've been offered a position abroad, he said quietly. It's in another country for at least a couple of years. Her breath caught. She tried to smile, to sound supportive. That's amazing, Omar. Congratulations. He looked at her for a moment longer, as if searching for something in her face. I don't know if it's amazing, he said. It's a good opportunity, but it also means leaving behind people who matter to me. The words sat heavy between them. She wanted to ask, do I matter to you enough to stay? But the question stayed locked inside. They spoke for a while longer about practical things, flights, packing, what life might be like there. But every sentence felt like a countdown. The evening ended with polite goodbyes, promises to meet again before he left. Back in her room, Aisha took out the letter. She unfolded it slowly, reading her own words under the dim light. It was raw, full of hope and impossibly tender. If she didn't give it to him now, she might never get another chance. But her hands trembled, because giving it meant risking everything, the comfort of their friendship, the balance they had kept for years. She placed the letter on her desk and stared at it for a long time, the sound of Omar's voice replaying in her mind. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow, she would decide. The next morning, Aisha woke early, her mind already restless. Sunlight streamed through her curtains, but it didn't feel like an ordinary day. She had slept with the letter still on her desk, as if keeping it close might give her courage. Today was the day Omar was leaving, his flight in the evening, his hours in the city slipping away. Her phone buzzed. A message from Omar. Can I see you before I go? Just one less coffee? Her heart leapt and sank at the same time. She replied quickly, yes. Tell me where. They met at the small cafe near the park, the one they had been going to since college. Omar was already there, sitting by the window, sunlight catching the faint stubble on his jaw. He smiled when he saw her, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of excitement and sadness. They ordered their usual drinks, and for a while they just talked about his new job, the city he was moving to, the unfamiliar weather he'd have to get used to. But beneath every laugh, every casual remark, was the awareness that this was the last time they'd sit across from each other like this, at least for a long time. When the drinks arrived, Aisha reached into her bag and touched the envelope. She could feel its edges pressing against her palm, almost as if the words inside were begging to be freed. Omar was telling her about how his apartment there would overlook a river, but she wasn't hearing every detail. Her mind was a blur of say it now, or you'll regret it forever. Omar, she began softly, cutting into a sentence. He looked at her, waiting. She pulled out the letter and placed it on the table between them. What's this? He asked, his fingers brushing the envelope. It's something I wrote, she said, her voice trembling. I was going to give it to you earlier, but I couldn't. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Omar slowly picked it up, his eyes locked on hers, searching for answers she wasn't ready to give out loud. "Should I read it now?" he asked gently. Aisha hesitated. Part of her wanted him to read it right there so she could see his reaction, but another part feared what that reaction might be. "Read it when you're on the plane," she whispered. He smiled faintly, slipping the letter into his jacket pocket. "Okay," he said, his voice warm but unreadable. They finished their coffee, walked outside, and stood near the curb as cars passed by. Omar glanced at his watch. "I should go. Thank you for today, Aisha. And for whatever's in that letter." She managed a small smile. "Safe travels." "Omar," he nodded, turned, and walked away. She watched him blend into the crowd until he was gone. That evening, somewhere high above the clouds, Omar reached into his pocket and unfolded the letter. His eyes scanned the words, her confession, her memories of every moment they'd shared, the love she had carried for years without speaking. The flight attendant passed by, but Omar didn't notice. He was too busy rereading the last line. "If you've ever wondered, Omar, yes, it has always been you." And far below, in her quiet room, Aisha sat by the window, wondering if he was reading it at that very moment, wondering if she had just changed everything or nothing at all. Now it's your turn. Which new words did you learn today? And how did the story make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. And tell me, where in the world are you listening to Story Orchard from? I love reading all your messages. If you enjoyed this story and learned something new, make sure to subscribe to Story Orchard, because every day a new tale and new words are waiting for you. See you in the next episode. Until then, keep listening, keep learning, and keep imagining.